Hello and welcome to another episode of the Uncommon Energy Podcast. On this week's episode, we're going to go over the results of the final regional championships of the 2023 season, the Fresno Regionals that took place this past weekend. We'll chat about a new Pokemon TCG series that is set to come out today, the day that this episode is airing. We'll, of course, have Guess That Flavor Text, everyone's real favorite segment of the podcast, and finally, we're going to end the episode by talking about the fact that Pokemon finally said something about a controversy. They made a statement about something that happened in the community at a regionals a few weeks ago. Give our thoughts, give our takes, read the statement, and chat about all that and more on this week's episode. My name is Chip Ritchie, joined here as always by my friend and co-host Azul GG. What's up, Azul? How we doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right. Um, yeah, I had Fresno this
Wide
weekend.
awake, huh?
I'm a little bit tired, I guess. I had Fresno this weekend, and it was really nice because this is the closest regional to me this season. It's about like a couple hours drive, so that's super nice. So I actually just like drove back on Sunday after I was out of top 8 contention. Get home, chill, get a good night's sleep for the following day. Had a lot of errands to run today, meal prepping, laundry, all that fun stuff that I do after tournaments when I get home. But yeah, made another day two. Wasn't quite, didn't do quite as well in day two as I had wanted to. I went in at 7-2 overall, which is a lot better than 6-1, but ended up going 3-3 overall. And I got 33rd, unfortunately. I got the half of the 30 pointers made top 32, half of them didn't, and I got 33rd on opponents. I actually looked at it today because I saw someone posted the standings, and I got 33rd on opponents
Nice.
resistance. Yeah, me and whoever got 32nd we were both at 50% opponents resistant, but my opponents were slacking for sure. So yeah, it's fine though. I'm not really too concerned about it. I'm not trying to like stressing out like chasing points for the last couple points for like, my invite obviously, or even like a top 16 finisher. I think I should be pretty much a guaranteed 100% lock for top 16 unless like the
I think
most
you're good, bud.
anomalous anomaly happened.
I don't think it's
Should be in a pretty
possible.
good spot. But yeah, it's pretty cool to see Caleb get the back-to-back finals. Unfortunately, another second place, but I think the big thing for him is like he was kind of on the cusp of getting top 16 the day two invite, but now he's like in a pretty solid spot to be able to close it out if he gets some points at ISC. So that was pretty dope.
Yeah, definitely. It was really cool to see Caleb with back-to-back weekends of really deep runs. We were talking about it. I don't think anyone has ever done back-to-back second place finishes at regionals. The back-to-back regional wins, obviously, that has happened a couple times, but the second place has not quite happened, which is, I mean, obviously winning is the main, the big thing, right? But getting second place is almost history remembers winners, but getting second place at these tournaments, especially when there's like 1,000 people at them, is almost as like it's just the difference of one game, right? It's almost equal as
Yeah.
far as like how good your tournament run was. Um, but yeah, and I was in Fresno as well. I casted, had a great time. I was paired up with Ethan Hegster Heggy, and I think we make a pretty good pair. Ethan and I casted together through the Players Cup tournaments, and I think that this was the first time we cast together this season, if I'm remembering right. I don't think we've been paired up together once yet. Maybe in San Diego, but I don't think so. So it was definitely a good time getting to work with him, and we got to do the finals as well together, which was great. Is always a blast, and we had some interesting moments, including a player who literally threw away their winning into top 8 game. They just had they it was literally a situation of all they had to do was just pass and they were not going to lose, right? And
Yeah.
they would have won the set 1-0, but they dug a little too hard, decked themselves out. They were turn 1 of time. Cal Connor was turn 2, and so Cal just drew and passed back. And Cal got the winning game too, which meant they tied, which meant Cal got to 34 match points and made it into cut, and then made it all the way to top 4 actually even, which was pretty wild. So yeah, Cal got away with one there, and I think he knows it for sure too. Um,
Yeah, I wasn't watching. I didn't watch. I was watching some of that match. I didn't watch all of it all the way through. I was like, but I feel like at some point in that game, Cal was like pretty far ahead. In game two, because I remember looking at it, I was like, oh, I guess Cal's probably just gonna win this, then it's gonna tie, and then Cal's gonna make has a chance for cut at 34.
Mhm.
because, yeah, Cal's opponent, if they win, was guaranteed, but Cal would be at 34, which is, like, maybe a bubble in, maybe
Mhm.
not. Um, but it seemed like Cal was super far ahead, but I didn't really realize how much time maybe I didn't really notice how much time was left, in the round.
Yeah, I
But yeah,
think
then
they
it went
got
to
down to the wire on time, and I also think it was like I don't remember exactly what happened, but it might have been like a Curlia plus getting knocked out plus a judge that like led to Cal kind of slowing down a little bit from where he was
okay.
in an advantage. I don't remember exactly what it was that happened, but yeah, I mean, regardless, Cal ended up getting in there and got the top four finish. Pretty stacked top four. Really, the top eight was really great, obviously as well. But like, if you look at just the four names, at these tournaments, it's just not too often that you look at it, and by the time we get to the final four, there it's literally four top 16 competitors, which is pretty cool that it's like the highest level of competition still happening at our regionals, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's also good to see that, like, the less familiar names are still getting up there too. Um,
Yeah, there was some
showing
surprise
the
ones. There's some new names.
Still showing, like, the growth in the game as far as the competitive scene goes, and it's not just the although I guess I could, like, speak to, like, maybe how hard the game is if you just see the same names over and over, but we do see the same names over and over, I think, consistently enough to show that there's still quite a bit of skill expression in the Pokemon TCG. No matter how many people, like, always like to bring up how it's all luck-based and you're flipping coins and rolling dice, and I always draw so bad, my opponents always get so lucky, like, if you still see the same names towards the top of, top 8s or contending for top 8s, whatever it might be, I mean, it just kinda shows that it's probably you misplaying and not so much you getting unlucky for those situations.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it depends on like I think the deck that everyone blames that on these days right now is Lugia, right? With the Mesagoza flips, with the Capturing Aroma flips. And I mean, I think the best example of it is Reagan, right? He won a regionals, he got top four at regionals and second place at a regionals, all with this
With
same
Lugia.
60 cards.
Yeah.
Um, and he did miss day two at a regionals with these same 60 cards. So I mean, he hit the bad side of variance at least once. Um, but I mean, made top eight three times. And he's
Yeah.
not gonna make top eight three times at these 1,000-person tournaments just on the back of good variance, you know? Like he's making the best plays and taking advantage of the fact that like he's getting the right coin flips, right?
Yeah, exactly. Definitely correct, yeah. Like, you didn't can't get yeah. It's like it's very hard to do, uh, just based on, good variance. I mean, good variance is gonna always be part of it, like,
Of course.
having a successful run, but, yeah, there definitely is. It's your own luck can be created a lot more in Pokemon than people think. But getting to the event a little bit more, this was a Team Northwest event who have been getting a little bit of flack recently, as we've been kind of nearing the end of the season. And I think it's even kind of been amplified just because of how well the last two events were ran before Fresno in Milwaukee and was it Charlotte or Hartford? Which one was it? It was some East Coast event.
Hartford.
Hartford. That was overload events, and day two events was Milwaukee. Overload events was Hartford, and that was probably their best events of the year. So that added in with how poorly Team Northwest events had been run this year. But I would say this is probably the best ran Team Northwest event this year as well. So even though it was still, I'd say not as good as Overload in day two. I don't just rag on Team Northwest just to rag on them. They definitely are the worst of the organizers here in America, but I think they did finish strong despite some hiccups, which is like one of the ones that you have on the screen there, I believe, with the massive line outside of the venue. Despite some hiccups, this is definitely their best ran event of the year for sure.
Yeah, the timing ended up being pretty decent. Like we still got out of there
It's like nine. I
day
think I got out at like
one.
8:30
Yeah,
personally.
day one and day two at reasonable times. So it wasn't too bad. And there was a lunch break still. So yeah, like I agree. Overall, it definitely felt like their best run event so far the year. I wasn't at Portland, which apparently was the worst one of the year. So I
Yeah.
don't know the details of that. But and this is also something, the big line. This is something that kind of was blown up on Twitter. There were several pictures of this, just people waiting to get into the venue. Pairings were up and people are still waiting in a line outside. Like I don't even know if you can attribute this to being Team Northwest's fault, right? Like I mean,
um,
this is like a venue thing, I think.
Well, there wasn't a lot of it was a smaller venue for sure. They didn't have, like, a
Sure.
ton of space. There wasn't a ton of entrances either, and they were doing the metal detector or like the wand metal detector thing. So there was a little bit more security at this one, and I don't mind that. I think that's fine. I think that extra level of security. I think I've seen some like bigger conventions who do that as well, having like the metal detectors and stuff. So that's fine. I don't think it's a big deal. But one thing you can kind of always rag on Team Northwest for here still is that they close check in on Friday at 4 p.m. Which like people are that's like when people are flying in to the to the
especially
a
to
lot
the
of
West Coast.
yeah, or like driving down, right? Like maybe people are doing like a half day of work and then they're driving, or you have a lot of people in California who are they're just gonna drive, right? But it's like a 6 hour drive, 8 hour drive. California's big, so I think you can still hold them that against them. That's definitely felt. I've definitely felt the difference. Like you go in there for the first day of the event, and the line to get into the hall is just always so big because they close the check in so early. I don't think it was a different time this time around. I want to confirm that to make sure I'm not gonna eat my words here. So I'm gonna confirm that real fast. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely something I've noticed in the past. Like that one thing specifically stands out to me every single time.
And of course, deck lists were still due the night before the tournament, which always throws a wrench in people's plans. Outside of the TCG, I saw Aaron Cybertron Zhang, one of the biggest names in Pokemon, but specifically Pokemon VGC.
Oh,
He missed his deck list or his team list submission for the VGC tournament, and was going to have to start the tournament with an 0-1 loss, 0-1, yeah, an 0-1 record to start the tournament. And he was like almost considering he needed to go 6-3 to get his invite, but that is their bubble, for points, I think, is 6-3, and because he didn't have his team list submitted, he was going to be at the bottom of the resistance regardless. Like, I think that's just how it
yeah.
works. If you're
Yep.
submitted late, you are at the bottom of whatever your record's resistance is. So he almost said that he wanted to just go home because he felt like he's just starting 0-1 and knows that he has to basically he
7
can
and
only
1 from
lose one
there.
more out of their 9 rounds, or otherwise he just doesn't get his invite. But then he did end up staying and playing, and he actually went 8-1 in day 1. So I think he's probably glad that he chose to do that. But
Not
and he
bad.
also I think he had a little thread on Twitter and was like, "I recognize that it's my fault, but like, why are these lists having to be due the night before the tournament when no one else
Yeah.
does this?" You know?
What was the reason? Initially, it was because of VG that we got pushed to an earlier the Friday time, right? Because like they wanted to make sure everything ran smoothly for VG because it was the first time doing it with
Well,
Scarlet and Violet, I believe, working it with RK9.
Well,
So
for
that
VG, they all have team lists
yeah,
that you have to print out your team list that you have to carry with you and give to your opponent every round. It would be like if we had a deck list that you had to give to your if they have open team sheets, or like if we had open
yeah.
deck lists like you have online. So I think that was the reason initially, is so they can get the team lists ready to go for in the morning. And that actually did end
Oh,
up being an issue for Overload, I think it was, at Orlando this year. um by the way, the other organizers, I'm pretty sure, still do morning of team list submission, and then they just print
yeah.
them that morning. But Overload, I think, did have an issue because their printer just died on them the morning of the tournament, and so
They have only one printer. What the heck? I didn't feel like if
I
you're printing out
guess
that many team
I don't know,
lists.
I don't know the exact details. I don't know the exact details. I know that a printer died at some point or something like that. I think is what was said, at least, and I think they had to go run to like FedEx and get them printed there or something like that. But they got it sorted out. The tournament was delayed a little bit because of that, but overall, I don't think anyone outside of that has had issues for VG having to print team lists. And
Yeah, I did confirm Fresno. They close at 5 on Friday, but I'm pretty sure all the other events have closed at 4. But compare that to day 2 and Overload, who closed at 8. That's a lot more people who have the potential to like check in on Friday as opposed to Saturday. And that's something I definitely recommend. Like if you have the time to do it, you definitely I know there's like people who like could do it on Friday and then just like choose not to and do it on you should definitely just go on Friday if you're like in walking distance from your hotel to the convention center. Or, whatever. You should definitely go check in on Friday. It definitely makes the event run smoother for everyone involved. I mean, I don't know why you'd wanna wait in a line on Saturday morning when you could just, just go into the event, so definitely recommend doing it for those who don't. But, yeah, that's, like, one of the reasons that the Saturday starts have been so much slower because like, people aren't checked in. There's not as many people checked in because their check-in time is so short. I feel like one time they didn't even do a check-in time, but that might not be correct. But yeah, besides that, there was a long lines to get into the venue, but we did end at a reasonable time. It was a small venue. I don't think we'll be going back to Fresno with how big Pokemon tournaments have gotten, how small the venue was. So I don't think that's gonna be. I don't think we're going back to Fresno. So I don't think we have to worry about Fresno specifically again. And hopefully, just like for venue choices in general going into next season, hopefully they're picking bigger venues that can support more players because most of our regionals here in America capped America and Canada, and yeah, we'll have like less like line problem type situations, and then hopefully Team Northwest has a longer check-in time on Fridays because hopefully they learn from that because it feels like it's definitely I definitely felt the impact like organizer to organizer that Team Northwest just felt worse going into Saturday morning.
Yep. But yeah, let's get to the tournament itself, and I guess we can start specifically Azul with you and the group and why you chose to change decks because you did not play Kyogre for this event after playing it in Hartford, playing it in Milwaukee. You guys had a ton of success in Milwaukee, obviously, with three in the top eight. In Hartford, Dane got top eight. So you guys were definitely riding high on the deck, and it seemed like it was the strongest deck. And we even talked about last week on the podcast how we felt like it was the best deck in the format. So if it's the best deck in the format, and you guys are kind of the original innovators of it, why the change for the last regionals of this season?
We just felt like the meta was gonna be a little bit too hostile towards the deck. And our predictions were mostly correct on that, I guess. Like majority of the Mews had Manaphy and Lost City. Random Arceus decks and some Lugia decks also had Manaphy in there as well, and some had Manaphy and Thornton because like the Penny versus Thornton argument is or like value is a little bit up in the air. Like there's some situations where Thornton's better than Penny. They do have some similar use cases of like recovering Urshifu in some way. Whether your Urshifu gets hit, you can reset it with Penny before it gets KO'd, or with Thornton, if they actually get the KO, you can bring it back. So once you add Manaphy in there, then you may as well like play the Thornton as so there's stuff like that. There's like too much stuff going on. It was a little bit too hostile for Kyogre, we felt like. And I think it was a pretty good prediction. Like I don't even think I would have made day two because I hit like two or three Mews day one, I think, with Manaphy. If I remember correctly. Maybe one of them was in day two, but yeah, I don't even know if I would have made day two to be honest. If if we had played Kyogre again. So I definitely preferred the more aggressive Drapion style list for sure.
Yeah, so we're looking at the Kyogre list here, and we will now look at the list that you guys landed on. Do you want to talk about kind of where the idea for this list came from? I mean, it's very turbo Lost Box. It's built
Yeah.
to get the turn one Mirage Gate when you go second and try to attack with either Raikou or Dragonite or Radiant Greninja, usually one of those three on that very first turn of the game.
Yeah, so just a turbo build. So like we still were kind of stuck on wanting to play Lost Box. We didn't really want to play any of the other top decks. We had our own reasons why we didn't want to play any of the other top decks. So we were like, all right, well, what about Turbo? If we're not going to play Kyogre, I think it'll be too hostile for Kyogre. What about a Turbo build? And Grant had played this at the London Cup at EUIC initially. And Brandon Cameraman had just done really well with a build. I think this is one card off of Cameraman's list or Brennan, and not Brandon. Brennan Cameron's list. I think is a one card different. I don't know how many cards different this is than Grant's list from the London Cup at EUIC. But we had knew the deck was kind of like a good deck for a while, but we just never thought it was better than Kyogre. Up until the point where like a deck is only can only be so good, like until your opponent, until someone starts playing like three Drapion in a deck, and then maybe it's time to put Mew down, right? Like so, same thing with Kyogre. Like once every deck has Manaphy, and every deck has lost cities and stuff like that. Like a deck can only be so good until the meta gets too hostile for it. And we thought like the tipping point was probably going to be Fresno or just enough to the point where it would at least be neutral playing this deck or the Kyogre deck. So we're like, okay, to kind of caution on the safer side of things, err on the safer side, or however you say that saying. Go with something, go with still a lost box build, but just like cut out the Kyogre.
And looking at Brennan Cameron's list, I do think the one difference is Brennan had a third nest ball, and instead of that third nest ball, you guys had the one choice belt, which was kind of a last second inclusion as well. What was the reason for choice belt making its way into the deck?
It's just a way for Dragonite to KO T-Tar with a V-Guard or KO an Arceus. It's like that's like basically the main two reasons. You could do some weird stuff with Cram in certain situations, but that doesn't really ever come up. So basically, it's just there for Dragonite to KO T-Tar or an Arceus, so it gives you a little bit better of a shot against those two matchups. Where the Kyogre is like really strong against Arceus decks and the Lugia deck. So the choice belt trying to help out in those matchups a little because I do think like the Lugia matchup is probably like unfavorable for sure and stuff like that. You want a
Sure.
little bit of something to work with, especially like a little bit of a surprise factor as well, right? Like your opponent thinks they're super safe, get 'em with the choice belt play, and then who knows, maybe the game just kind of you can like take over some situations like that.
Oh, yeah. How many of your opponents were, like, definitely playing around Kyogre during
Pretty
your
much all of
games?
them.
Yeah.
Pretty much all of them. Everyone thought I had Kyogre. I thought like once I played the first trekking shoes in any of my sets, people would like be like, "Oh, okay, it's not Kyogre." But yeah, pretty much everyone was playing as if I had Kyogre. I maybe at some point in day 2, people stopped playing as if I had Kyogre, but a lot of my I hit like 3 mirror matches in day 2, so, like, most of my matches in day 2 were mirror matches, so, yeah, pretty much everyone thought I had Kyogre, so that was, like, also a nice buff as well, like, it's one of those things when you just, like, switch up a list or a count. The other thing that I can think of that kind of, like, sticks out to me this season that happened is when we played 2 boss in the list we played at Charlotte, I wanna say, in the Lost Box list we played at Charlotte where we played
Mhm.
2 boss, or when we even cut Kyogre going into, like, OCIC. I think that was the one where we cut Kyogre.
Yep,
Maybe it
Sky
was the one
Seal
before that.
build. Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, those adjustments, like, people like, at OCIC, everyone thought I had Kyogre pretty much for a decent time, not all the way to the finals, obviously, and then same thing with the double boss build, like, the amount of games I won with second boss was, like, pretty high at Charlotte, so sometimes just making an adjustment like that, doing something not just out of the norm for our group, but kind of out of the norm of the meta, especially with,
And
like, the
that's
double boss.
and that's why you pretty consistently see, like, you guys won't play the exact same 60 multiple events in a row because you want to be adjusting and evolving. Now, sometimes the
I
same
wouldn't
60 is
say
just the best answer, right? Like
yeah.
Hartford to Milwaukee, they didn't feel like there was enough eyes on the ogre deck, right? Dan got top 8, but that was it, right? Like not
Yeah.
enough. It wasn't at the forefront of people's minds, and so the meta was still right for Kyogre to just kind of come through and do really well.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that, like, we are change the deck with the purpose of trying to have it not be the exact same 60, but, like, it just usually naturally changes as the meta
Evolves, yeah.
evolves and our, like, opinion on, like, what is the optimal way to actually play the deck
Well, it was still a good showing from you guys.
for
I
our
mean, you
deck.
got 33rd, like you said. Caleb got second. Grant bubbled out of Top Cut. I don't know if you call it a bubble out or if people bubbled in. There was like a lot of people with 34 match
Yeah, it was
points.
50-50, it was 6 of them, 3
Okay,
in,
okay.
3
So,
out. Yeah, I don't know, you'd call that's pretty much neutral, like, you can't be, like, mad that you didn't make
yeah.
the cut in that kind of situation for sure. So it's
Yeah, I
not
think
like yeah,
Grant was kind of annoyed because it's like he lost round 1 of day 2 and then won 5 in a row. And
and
that
didn't make.
it's just not enough, right?
Yeah, I feel like they should, like, start adding, like, top 16 or asymmetrical cut. I think that would be a good fix to, like, because I think you should be able to go into day 2, take 1 loss, but then still make cut if you win the rest, if you're making day 2. So I think if it was a top 16, that would be true. If it was asymmetrical cut, it would also fix that. So I just think one of those things would be nice to add, like, a little bit extra
What if they put like a
cushion.
record number
Um,
to get to? Like if there's it's 6-2-1 or 19 match points to get to day 2. What if they just set it at 34
I mean,
match points or
yeah.
more to get to top cut, right?
Yeah, they could do something like that as well. I mean, just something to get a little bit of extra cushion. I don't know, maybe an extra round would also do that, right? But then we'd be pushing for like when do you activate the extra round? I definitely wouldn't have activated at Fresno. So
Yeah.
it's tough though for sure. It's definitely tough.
Well, like we said, Caleb ended up getting second, and he was defeated in the finals by Reagan Retzlav
The Lugia
with
again.
Lugia. And yeah, I mean, we talked about this last week, I think, of like how many people are playing this list. And we only have the top 8 from Fresno. So once we get all the day 2 results in Limitless, this list of people who've done well with this deck,
Oh yeah.
this meta is going to be even longer.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
say, I was like, I thought it would have been. I was like, only Reagan, I guess, only Reagan was playing the 60 at this. But yeah, they aren't updated, so we don't know how many more. This could become the because like Robin put out like an interesting tweet before Fresno, I think, kind of talking about the decks with the most finishes on a limitless page like this. I don't remember what all of them were. It was like this deck,
Ian
uh,
Rob's Lugia
the
list
Ian
was
Rob
one.
Lugia. But yeah, this might surpass Ian Rob's Lugia now. After we get the full list of results. And actually, that's what I've been telling people too. Is like when anyone asks me what to play, and they always like they're like thinking about Lost Box or Mew or Lugia. I'm just like, just play Reagan's Lugia list. I was like, there's like a couple different things that I've been trying out with it, and I like recommend those. But like besides that, basically just play Reagan's Lugia.
Yep.
This is a really good deck, really solid list, and I mean, yeah, Lugia is still a very strong deck. It does have those And yeah, we mentioned at like the beginning of the cast is like it doesn't have more RNG than other decks. It just feels that way because you're flipping a coin, and if you get heads, you're winning the game. If you get tails, you're losing the game. But if you just like played a card that like drew two cards, those two cards could be you winning game or losing the game. It just doesn't feel as bad because you're just flipping a coin. But the deck isn't actually like less consistent or more high rolling than like any of the other top decks. It just feels that way. That's because you're like people are like letting their emotions dictate their opinion of the deck based on having to flip a coin or roll a die.
So I guess we can, before we go into more of the results from this tournament, just take a quick little caveat to talk about this deck in the next format, Paldea Evolved. Now, Lugia, there's a few different ways people have been playing Lugia as well, with the Jet energies and the Snorlax, the Therapy energy, those things. Tons of different ways people are trying it out. But Single Strike Lugia is still solid in the next format, and I think that's the one that's still kind of been the most played version. It feels like, even with the other versions doing decently too,
Yeah.
or most successful, I should say. Maybe not most played, but
I
um,
think it is the most played, the single strike is.
sure. So, I mean, is this a deck that it's like you can take this list and then swap the two Judge for two Iono and just call it a day? Is that like all
I
you need to
think
do?
so. Yeah, probably, to be honest. And maybe you would yeah, you probably wanna play Ionos over Judges, but yeah, I think so. I think you probably would. Yeah, we saw, like, initially when the new stuff was coming out, we're like, "Okay, the new stuff is out. There's these other new ways to play Lugia." But as the formats got more and more refined, everyone just kinda went back to and the most successful lists became the single strike builds once again. So, yeah, all the work's being done for us as far as Lugia goes over in Japan and Taiwan so far, and it's like, yeah, they've kind of come back to the single strike being seemingly the best way to play it. Yeah, probably just add the Ionos. I don't think you're like playing super hard or anything in there, so then the deck is good to go once again.
We also had Andrew Hedrick getting top four with a really straightforward and consistent Mew VMAX list. He didn't have the Manaphy in here, did have the Lost City, like you mentioned. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it gets more straightforward, much more straightforward than this, right? This is kind of like the optimized Mew double turbo list for this format. And he also started 12-0 at this
Yeah.
tournament. And that's not the first time that he's done that this season, by the way. I think in Knoxville, he started 12-0 with Lugia as well. So, um, yeah, it turns out this guy's pretty good at Pokemon, huh?
Yeah, Hedrick playing some really solid Pokemon again. And then who did Hedrick lost to Reagan
Yeah.
in top four, right? Yeah. Yeah, Hedrick lost to Reagan. But yeah, Mew, I mean, yeah. And we see we'll talk about it a little bit more here, but Mew seems to still be pretty good even with the Paltea evolved releasing. But yeah, Mew in there. There was another Mew in Top Cut as well, I believe.
Lee,
But we don't have
Lee.
the list. Yeah, Lee, and I think Lee did play the Manaphy in the Lost City. I don't know for
Lee didn't have
sure.
Manaphy, but he
Oh,
did
no
have
Manaphy.
he had Avery. That was kind of his other like tech
Oh,
card, I think.
for the Guardy matchup,
I guess
pretty good
so.
against Guardy. Yeah. Which I think was a pretty decent play. Guardy did jump up like to 17%. I think the meta like jumped up from like 10 or 11. It was like 10 or 11 at Milwaukee up to 17. Um, which I don't think is like a I think that's like a it is mostly because Henry won, obviously, but I don't think it was like a calculated increase in play. Like I don't think it was smart that a lot of that many people picked up Guardy personally, um
Oh, there was
yeah,
also
no
an
mana fee for
incident
Lee.
that we can talk about, I guess, with Lee's top 8 match on stream. He played against Andrew Hedrick. Um, I don't know if you've seen much of the discussion around this,
I
but
did
Lee,
read it earlier, but go ahead. Yeah, go ahead
yeah,
and break
so
it
Lee
down.
got a game or a double prize penalty going into game 2. He lost a pretty long game 1 that was back and forth. It was pretty close. Andrew was kind of ahead the whole time, but Lee had a very real chance to win. It came down to the end of the game where he had Rock Sand, plus used his Fan of Waves, which is not really in there for the Mew
Ooh.
matchup, but it was pretty good in this spot because he put the double turbo on the bottom of the deck, and Hedrick the last turn had just lost vacuumed away a double turbo. So he only had one double turbo left in the deck, and he needed DTE to win to just be able to attack. Lee did whiff like the VMAX, I think, to attack with a clean Mew that turn. So it was like literally all Hedrick needed was the double turbo energy, but Path was in play. And I think Lee had actually just judged. It was like Roxanne the previous turn and then judge Fan of Waves,
Man.
something like that the
Yeah.
next turn. Um, if I'm just trying to remember off the the top of my head. And then Hedrick did dug he got the lost vacuum off the judge, and then did eventually hit the one double turbo that was left. But it was really, really close. So you're going into game number two. Lee is going to get to go first. He's going to be an advantage in the mirror match. He's setting out his prize cards for the stream, and one of his prize cards gets flipped over to the raised edge of the prize card camera. The card gets revealed. Totally unintentional, not something he meant to do. But whenever a card gets revealed in the Pokemon TCG, and they seem to enforce it extra hard whenever it happens on stream, it leads to a double prize penalty. And in the Mew matchup specifically, being down two prizes in that mirror is pretty much a game loss, right?
Yeah, it's pretty tough because then you don't even get Roxanne. You don't even get access to
Exactly.
Roxanne, your opponent, which is huge. So you don't even have like the comeback. And even when you're ahead, you're not truly ahead either. So yeah, it's pretty tough to make it come. That kind of sucks. I don't think those kind of things should be double prize penalties. I think like it should scale though. Like you shouldn't be able to like you shouldn't be able to sit there and 3 games in a row flip over a prize card. It should be the first one should just be like okay a warning, and then it should scale from there. It should be like warning, double prize penalty, sure, but I think it should like scale. I've always talked about this. I think it should scale like warning, warning, game loss, match loss. Maybe you go to a DQ at that point. I don't know. I haven't really thought that far ahead. Maybe match loss, DQ. But I think it should be like double prize penalties are kind of silly, and I think it like those kind of situations shouldn't be penalized with like an effective game loss, right? Like a double prize penalty is almost always a game loss, like almost 100% of the time. But, like, in those situations, it's just yeah, it's, like, obviously an accident, not that big of a deal, and if Lee doesn't have any, like, prior stuff in
Yeah.
the tournament or just kind of, like, a bad track record, I don't know if, like, how well they carry over, like, warnings tournament to tournament. I think there is some database for it, but I actually don't know for sure. So if Lee doesn't have a ton of priors, which I'm pretty sure Lee doesn't, especially in that tournament specifically, probably also didn't, then it should just be, okay, a warning this time, but if you do it again, I think at that point, maybe it is reasonable to deal out a 2 prize penalty. I would like to see it just kind of scale up to game losses, like warning, warning, game loss, like I mentioned. But yeah, I don't know. It just feels like, especially on stream, it's like it literally just ruins. Like, who wants to watch that game at that point? It's like, well, okay, I guess Lee loses. Like, takes all the excitement and fun out of like the experience of watching the game. So I think they really need to revisit the double prize penalty and kind of the warning and penalty system in the Pokemon TCG, hopefully going into next season. But if not next season, maybe midway through next season. But I think they really need to revisit it because I think it's like these 2 prize penalties are given out way too aggressively for things that are obviously accidents. And the one thing I like to kind of top that all off with as well to kind of give a better perspective of real, we are in a competition but we're not like in the MLB of Pokemon, right? It's not like you have only the best players playing against the only the best players who should all know better in certain situations and stuff like that. You got like T-ball to MLB, right? So I don't think we should be giving out the same. And now I know like Lee is a little bit more seasoned of a player, but I think because we are in a situation where it is T-ball to MLB as far as the Pokemon TCG goes, where you got like people who it's their first tournament, first time picking up a Pokemon deck, even sometimes, and then you have people who've been playing for like 10 years plus, like me. Like I think we can. It doesn't have to be like super try hard rulings in these kind of situations. And I think there should be a little bit more lenience at least until they've built up a track record throughout the tournament. And I don't know for sure where the breaking point for that is, where it should scale into game losses, match losses, and so on. But I think they really need to revisit the system because it's just really bad. And we saw it earlier this year with Rahul as well, right? At
Yeah.
OCIC, where it felt really bad. And then watching the game at that point, it just ruined it, killed the vibe. Like who wants to watch that game anymore at that point?
Yeah, I totally agree, and it really does. It just makes for a worse viewing experience, and that's
So
something
bad.
that's they're
It's
really trying
gonna
to focus
throw it
on.
there
Is
one
like
more
they want
time.
this game to be. They want more people to be watching and more
Yeah.
people tuning in. And the regional stream numbers have like gotten bigger pretty steadily over the year. Like more and more people are tuning in, which is great to see the growth from it. But stuff like this when we only get to feature one match out of the 4 top 8 matches happening and then it gets decided like that, it definitely feels just tough, right?
Yeah. One last thing I'll put out there as well. It is more jarring. And once again, a good example of this would be Cameron Chenoy when I played against Cameron at OCIC. It's just you're out of your element playing on stream. It's jarring. Like mistakes are almost like, and that kind of makes sense why so many mistakes happen on stream because they're just more likely to happen. You're so much out of your comfort zone, and especially for like newer players who get up on there sometimes, like you're so out of your comfort zone. Like that's why mistakes happen so often on stream. I feel like it's just you're not used to playing in that kind of atmosphere. A lot more stress, pressure, whatever. Of course, there's a lot of backseaters out there who will claim otherwise, and that, but yeah, just ignore them. but that's like another thing as well, right? I don't know. I feel like there's no, I don't even know, not lenience, but like no nuance given to that kind of
Yeah.
development of that situation. And once again, like I said, it's we're playing in tournaments that they are competitions. There should be some kind of rules and guidelines, but like I said, it's T-ball to MLB. We're not just playing MLB. At that point, it could be a little bit more understanding for certain things, but when it is T-ball to MLB, I feel like the rules don't need to be ridiculously ultra competitive strict, and there can be some more. I don't know. I just feel like things are too harsh right now. I guess that'll kind of end my rant. Feels bad for Lee. But yeah, hopefully, I mean, I think it's something that hopefully they just visit in the future. Hopefully next season, but you never know.
So going back through the top 8 of this tournament, Cal Connor did make top 4, like we mentioned. He was playing Gardevoir. Henry Brand was also at this tournament. He ended up in the top 32, I'm pretty sure. Didn't quite get into
Close.
the top 8 again. Yeah, lost his winning in. Um, but yeah, Cal made it in with the Guardy, and he had a couple interesting things here. He did choose to play Clara instead of Miriam, which is what most people have gone with, which I think I'm a pretty big fan of. After Puka's tweet last week, where he's like, I just don't understand why people play Miriam. Because most of the time, when you're playing Miriam in your Gardevoir deck, you're putting cards back that you're crossing your fingers you draw into when you draw 3 cards. So why not just play Clara and put them directly into your hand? I don't know, it makes sense to
Yeah.
me. Cal seemed to agree. And then Cal also had the Drapion V in here as well for the Mew matchup.
Yeah, the Drapion's cool. I actually really like that. I think it's a good idea for a tech card there from Cal. Kind of making the judgment call on Mew's going to be more popular. Like maybe making that kind of like it's like, all right, Mew players playing Lost City, playing Manaphy that beats Kyogre. Okay, if they're gonna do that, that's gonna hurt the Lost Box players. But I want to be able to keep up with the Mew players consistently. Guardy already has like a fine Mew matchup, and I would even say that Guardy's Mew matchup is favorable. But even when you have a favorable matchup, you can still lose, right? Let's say Guardy's matchup against Mew is like 55 or 60%, but if you can make it like an 80, 90% win rate, if you play
Yeah.
against enough of them, it makes it worth it to like over tech for a matchup, right? It's all about your expected win rate at the
And
tournament. And
especially
if
if it's
it,
expected to be a high percentage of the
yeah,
meta too, right?
exactly, yeah, and good players playing it, right? Which is also
Hmm.
maybe a good prediction there from Cal. So I like the Drapion. I would say like the one comment I'll make on the Miriam is like the same reason to like play Serena over second boss. You never want to use Serena as your draw supporter. You never want to use Miriam as your draw supporter. The only argument for Clara is being some kind of draw support is you can recover energy and then Greninja it away. But most of the time you'll have access to an energy to be able to do that with Greninja. So it's just like that little bit of extra. We even saw it in the finals match of
That's true.
Henry versus uh Caleb, where Henry used Pokestop, discarded a Pokemon, and then Miriamed the Pokemon back into the deck to actually be able to draw cards that turn and then set up from there, right? So it's just that little bit extra. So I think it's pretty close. A lot of the time when you play the Miriam, the deck already has so many Pokemon search cards and sees so many cards, you'll probably draw into the Pokemon you really need. And it's not one of those situations where it's like it's a one of, like every Pokemon in this deck is a two of. Because like you're usually the only one that's like a one of is like the Cresselia, but you usually never need to really recover the Cresselia like that. Like you don't need back to back Cresselias, and you have two shiny Arcanas, you have two Zacians, you have two Guardy EX, so you already are pretty aggressive. You already have like a decent amount of outs to like that
Sure.
secondary Pokemon.
And then I think the most unique deck for sure in the top
Yeah.
8, kind of the talk of the town, was David Tom Have Alexi with the Turbo Darkrai V-Star. This one was really cool. We featured it on stream in the first round stream day 2. And yeah, I mean, it is all gas. It's just trying to get through the deck. And I think I'll pull up his Pokestats live. This definitely helped David. Is if you look at his day 2 run, he played it out in round 9, by the way, was 6-2. I don't know if it was him or his opponent that chose to play it out, but played it out, got the win, and then hit Mew, Lost Box,
Good
Mew,
tie.
Mew, Mew, and Mew to, to go 501 in day number 2. I mean, I, that's
That
like
Mew.
that's the plus side of the variance right there, right?
Yeah, that is like that Reagan is not running hot with Lugia 3 times in a row. But I think hitting 5 Mews in day 2 playing Turbo Dark is the that's a little bit of the good variance there. Because yeah, I don't think anyone's gonna. No one thinks Darkrai's a good deck after this, right? I don't know how good David actually even thinks the deck is. Right, the deck is still probably a pretty mid deck overall. So cool to see, right? It's always cool to see these off brand decks uh rise to the top sometimes, or off meta decks rise to the top sometimes. And it is cool to kind of see how far you can push a deck, because no matter how bad a deck is, it can still be there's still a maximum, right? There's still a capacity for how good it is in the meta, right? And this might be it here for Turbo Dark, right? Or close to it, I'd have to imagine. Yeah. So I'm not gonna be testing Darkrai V-Star personally going into Paldea Evolved. But it's always cool to see. Rest of them on the top 8, of course. Um, and yeah, it's always cool to see like those unique decks kind of pop up. Which you saw another one of those actually with the another top 8 deck that was pretty off meta. Now this one was kind of getting established heading into the tournament though, because there was Christian got on stream with this at Milwaukee. And it's this Arceus Klefki, kind of just like anti-meta deck, right? Is that what you'd call it? Aerodactyl? It's just anti-meta. I feel like it's the best way to put this one.
Yeah, this feels less like anti-meta and more of just like a lock deck, right? Just like a general.
Kind of, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you could kind of that's kind of just semantics there, which one you want to classify it as more, but um yeah, it's we talked about this a couple weeks ago. It's pretty much just whatever I'm going up against, they're not going to be able to use their abilities. If I'm going Lost
That's the
Box,
idea.
we've got our Clef Keys. That's going to slow them down. If I'm going up against Mew or Lugia, I've got Path and Aerodactyl.
And
Um,
Aerodactyl.
and that's like, I mean, really what it comes down to. Just use that Ancient Star, make it so they can't really do much of anything, and then attack with Arceus, attack with Aerodactyl, even.
Yeah, that's like your
Lo
big key in the
Aerodactyl
Lost
is
Box
like a
matchup.
really solid attacker, and with a double turbo energy, it KOs all basic Vs pretty much,
Yeah,
except for
it's a
Lugia V, which
Dragonite.
does resist the fighting, and Dragonite, I guess, as well. Yeah, that's a good point. But
No, no, it gets the KO on Dragonite, yeah. That's the
well, I was saying with a double turbo energy, but yeah.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, I'm picking up what
So
you're
it
putting
does
down now.
220 with the
Yeah,
double
yeah, yeah.
turbo still. Yeah,
Usually you're loading it up with Arceus. You're usually getting that
fair.
240. Still doesn't KO the Lugia, though. The Lugia still survives. Lugia V, the ultimate counter to Aerodactyl Arceus.
Yeah, and then they go read the wind, and then you lost dive again.
Yeah. Yeah, so kind of just like like ability lock, like it's just trying to like, and it can do it against most. A really cool combo that I actually didn't realize that I could do is like if you have Klefki in the active, and then actually is that how that works? I'm pretty sure that's how that works. If you have Klefki in the active with Path in play, they can't Pumpkaboo, right? Because the Klefki stops the Pumpkaboo.
Yeah,
Yeah, so they need to draw into like one of the raw stadiums. So it's like another way to slow Lugia down early until you get to your Aerodactyl to fully take away their abilities. We saw Makani, who's always a Arc Piloter, playing a similar deck. It was like Arc
I don't think he had the
Aerodactyl,
clef keys.
no
Yeah,
Clef Keys, and was like a little bit like to the max to try and beat Lugia. Had like the Yveltal in there that removes special energy from play. So after you get off the Aerodactyl play, just in case they hit like back-to-back double turbos with their Lugia, then punch your Aerodactyl and can threaten the boss, you can go on the next turn and use Yveltal and just remove their energy from play and just completely lock them. Even if they get fortunate enough to draw like that combo of the double turbo or
oh my
3 attachments and
gosh.
start swinging on it.
I was gonna pull up
Um,
Makani's deck list, but look at this. This is what he tweeted for his deck list.
there's a Mawile in there too.
I,
Yeah, there's a lot of things.
yeah, there's a lot of things, but you can't tell what's happening because he just
Nope.
shuffled it and then laid it out. So there you go.
I wonder what match of the Mawile. I still been seeing people play Mawile in Sable's Art, but like every Lugia player plays an out, and every Guardy player
Yeah,
still plays Penny. I just don't get the point of playing Mawile
and
anymore. I guess
even
they
all
could
the
burn it at some point, and then you can take advantage of it, but
it's so
it's nuts
niche. I feel
anymore.
like. I mean, it is a one card inclusion that like you can potentially just win a game with, right? In the right
Yeah.
scenario. So maybe it's worth it. But
Well,
I
you
mean,
have to also not
Piper
be
got
decking
top
out.
32 with Sable's Art, and she still played them all while as
That's where
well.
I saw it. Yeah, Piper had the Mawile. That's why I saw it was in Piper's list. But yeah, it just feels so bad. I don't know. I think it's bad because then you also have to play like the Pidgey, so you don't deck out first. We didn't even see there's no deck out way to not deck out in. See, this is a nice deck list layout. Shout out to Piper. Thumbs down on Makani. Thumbs up for Piper. This is how you lay out a deck list. This is a pretty nice layout. I like this layout.
Seems solid. Did have the Defiance band in here. This was another cool list in day two. You had talked about how you felt like Sablezard was like pretty decent going into the tournament this coming weekend. Piper, I think, was the best finishing one. You can double
I think
check the
Sable's art has been
Pokestats
pretty decent for pretty
live.
much like every tournament in this meta. It's just not good enough. It's not. Yeah, I just don't think the deck is good enough. It's not. It doesn't make any sense to play Sable's art. I think still over any other Lost Box build, which is weird because they are different decks. So like, how do you even like qualify that? Like, is it just like a bad deck at that point then? Like, I don't even know how to like think about Sable's in terms of that. Just because should it really be compared to being like, oh well, if like Lost Box or if Mirage Gate's Lost Box is like theoretically better in the meta, should you just never consider playing Sable's? But they're not really the same deck. They're pretty close though. I don't know. I guess just because they're both Lost Zone decks that play almost all the same attackers, it just feels that way.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm not sure about that one.
Well, I think that's going to cover everything from the top cut of Fresno. We might talk more about day two next week if all the decks get released, but
We're not talking
honestly,
about day two. Paldea
yeah,
evolves out.
it's the end of the format. So
One
I
thing
don't
we
know.
hopefully will have
How did
more
this
results
format feel to
from.
you overall, looking back at it now? I
Oh,
mean, especially we were coming off of one of your least favorite formats of all time,
one of the
the Silver
worst.
Tempest
I
format.
Yeah.
How
Thankfully,
did
I
this one
always forget.
compare?
It's better, but just because there's not like a tier S broken deck. A lot of really good decks have their strengths. Like Lugia
The
is good,
meta
Mew's good,
evolved.
Lost Box is good, Guardy's good. Like a bunch of good decks. Arc Pile is still a thing, which is a good thing as well. Just a lot of good decks throughout. So yeah, it's just I don't know, just a fun meta. I think it's solid, for sure. Um,
So
yeah, it's just more enjoyable in less meta.
Fresno was not the only tournament this weekend. There was the special event in Johannesburg, South Africa. We're not going to really talk about that one because there's only a couple lists on Limitless for it. But there was also the Japan Championships that took place. It's basically like Japan's nationals, the biggest tournament
Yeah.
besides the World Championships taking place in Japan. And we don't have the full results from the tournament on Limitless yet. I'm assuming Robin is going to try to like compile and get that
I think I
information.
saw a tweet from the list earlier that they're working. It'll be up
Yeah.
eventually.
But we do at least have the top 2 decks. So we'll definitely, this is one that we'll definitely come back and talk more about in future weeks if we get more information, but we did wanna take just a minute to at least look at these top 2 decks that we have. Um, and the tournament was won by Fusion Mew. So even with Spiritomb being
Which
legal,
was
being a
played.
card, and was played in the second place Gardevoir deck, Fusion Mew found a way. And it's in large part because of the interaction with Spiritomb and the Fusion Strike energy, right? Spiritomb is an ability that says that basic Pokemon V in play can't use their abilities, but Fusion Strike Energy says the Pokemon this card is attached to isn't affected by the effects of your opponent's Pokemon's abilities. So you can still Fusion Strike system if you put a Fusion Strike Energy on your Genesect.
Yeah. So I don't know if that makes it worth it to play Mew in the next format. It might. One of the
I
things
mean,
I think
it
is
does pretty much mean you have to play Fusion Mew,
yeah, you
right?
basically well, I mean if no one plays Spiritomb, but it
Of
could be
course,
that game
yeah.
of, like what would we call it? A game of cat and mouse or game of chicken, right? You're gonna play the
Game of
Spiritomb, but you're not
Karen
gonna play
versus
Spiritomb.
Night March.
Yeah, Karen versus Night March. I mean, I think one of the reasons that Mew has seen more success over in Japan because it is best of one. So these fusion Mew decks being able to pop off game one, just donk something, and then take over the game from there is like a lot more probable, right?
Day two was best
Um,
of three, though.
is it best out of three? Are
Yep.
you sure?
Yeah, I watched some of it. Yeah.
Okay, so day two's best out of three. Um, I say like takes away some of my statement then though. Not as yeah. So I mean, I don't, and we've seen Fusion Mew actually doing well in other tournaments in Japan as well. So if day twos are generally best out of three, I mean, I guess there's no argument there for that. Maybe it is just good. It seems, but also like I mean, this like Mew Guardians already like feels good into Mew, and it feels even better into Fusion Mew generally because they have like less paths and stuff, right? Less control. But yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't say I'm definitely not sold on this Fusion Mew shenanigans for sure. I'm not sold on it, especially with Guardy potentially being or definitely being like the best second format next set release with about they evolved. Um, yeah, I'm not sold on these Fusion Mew shenanigans yet. Like, I just feel like there's no way that with Spiritomb in the format that it makes any sense, even though you do have an out to it, that it makes any sense to be playing Mew anymore.
Uh, I do want to talk about probably the most unique card in this Fusion Mew list. It definitely sticks out like a sore thumb amongst
Oh
the
yeah.
psychic Pokemon is the blue Ice Q. Fusion Strike Ice Q. It's got the block slider attack for a water and a colorless. This attack does 40 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon for each Fusion Strike energy attached to all of your Pokemon. What do you think this is in here for, Azul?
Probably to snipe Spiritomb off the
Yeah,
bench.
that's just
Yeah,
it,
you
huh?
probably just It does it only to one Pokemon though, right?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
someone was telling me at the tournament when like we figured out who won that like you could split the 40s. But I
No.
don't think you can. It's actually not the first time the Ice Cube's been played in the Mew deck. I think Kaya played it at some European event. So I've seen it before. I've seen the Ice Cube in the Mew deck before over in Europe. I think Kaya was running it. But yeah, that's gotta be that's the only thing I think of. Is like you just want to like turn one or turn two be able to snipe the Spiritomb off the bench so you can regain access to your abilities. But even then, like I was saying, like it feels like going that far out of your way to deal with Spiritomb is like putting you so far behind deck building wise,
I mean,
and kind
it
of
is
board state
probably a card that
wise.
comes up elsewhere, right? Like
Oh yeah, like I'm
against
sure you can use
against
it
a
other
stage 2 deck like
places.
Gardevoir, right? I mean, you can go Judge or
Well, they have
Iono
Manaphy.
plus snipe down a Curlia, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
obviously they do have Manaphy, right? But I don't
I
always
don't.
get it. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
also typically best of one. Are you going out of your way to bench Manaphy against a Mew deck in its
I'm
best
kinda
of
like
one?
I'm kinda like hating on all the cheesy stuff that did well this weekend. I'm just like not the Darkrai deck, the Turbo Dark deck, the Ice Cube and the Fusion Me. I'm just like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like
Listen though, like who's benching Manaphy against the Mew deck, right?
I mean, he's the best 2 out of 3. Once they see your
Well,
Ice Cubes, I'm
in day 2, I think day 1
yeah,
was still
yeah.
best of 1.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know. That's 2 bench spaces at that point. Are you just losing based on not having enough Curly in play at that point? I think it would be an argument for sure. But I
Sure.
think you just give them like you bench Spiritomb, you let them do the Ice Cube play if they can pull it off under Spiritomb, and then I don't know. I feel like you're trucking them from there, so I'm not too worried about it. So yeah, I have to see this fusion shenanigans like make this thing has to be like I have to see it myself. Still not convinced. It has been doing well. Like I said, did win here. This is Japan Nationals. You know, this is their biggest event. Besides Worlds will be there, of course, this year. So that'll be the biggest event in Japan after this. But we did see it pop up in like the top 16s, I think, at some of the other or the last big tournament in Japan as well, where Spiritomb was legal. So obviously, it's still being able to compete over there. I'm still not convinced. I have to see it myself. I have to experience it to believe it.
And then the second place list was Gardevoir, um, packing probably well, 3 of the 4 biggest cards for the deck in this list, the Iono, the Super Rod, the Artisan. This list does not play any copies of Reversal Energy.
Yeah,
That's
a little more
typically something we've
straightforward.
seen be just a consistent one of choosing not to play it here. Also has the one Mirage Step Curlia, which is pretty much I don't think I've seen since like the very beginning of the Scarlet and Violet format. I feel like everyone's kind of dropped the Mirage
Yeah,
Step Curlia.
I feel like it gets worse with Super Rod because like you don't need to as aggressively as that many options to your guard wars. They're playing a little bit heavier over a candy count. Yeah, like this list is just super straightforward, right? Like last tournament that we saw, the Gardevoir list, I think was the one in Taiwan. Everyone had like the reversal energy. There was like the quad reversal energy build that got second.
Yeah.
But now we see this list super straightforward, just trying to be consistent, which is usually a pretty big strength in not just the first couple tournaments in a format, but just kind of in general, it can kind of be pretty strong from there. Yeah, we see it. Not no surprise to see it kind of a Guardy deck in the finals, which Guardy I don't think has missed the finals yet in Paldea format, or are effective Paldea on format. I don't think Guardy has missed a finals appearance yet. I think it's been in every finals of every major tournament so far. Someone
Yeah.
correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on that. But since it's gotten Iono and Super Rod, I don't think it's missed the finals yet.
Yeah, definitely the 2 biggest ones. And we mentioned last week, like Super Rod is kind of sneakily the most impactful of the cards.
I think Iono is the most impactful, but yeah, like Super Rod is. I don't know how good Iono would be if you didn't have Super Rod, though, right? Like you can't
Maybe, yeah.
disrupt them and recover. So, like, I mean, this them together in Gardevoir is just like a blessing. It's just like makes the deck so good.
Well, we'll talk more about the Japan Championships next week or maybe the week after, depending on when the rest of the results get uploaded. But we figured we'd just at least mention those since we do have those 2 lists available. Well, even with Spiritomb hanging around, Mew doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. And then one more little note or little story I guess we can cover quickly before we get into Guess That Flavor Text is a new series coming to the Pokemon TCG website called How Do You Play? A Pokemon TCG documentary series announced, and it is going to be streaming tomorrow. A 3-part documentary series about the Pokemon TCG community. It's called How Do You Play? And it follows a teacher, a longtime Pokemon fan, a fan, and a family. Episode 1 will debut on the official website tomorrow, followed by episodes 2 and 3 the following 2 days.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. They've been then doing I mean, this made me think I'm definitely gonna watch it. I'll probably watch it on stream, to be honest. Like, I'll be able to react to that live, right? That's fair use, right? I'm not gonna get
Better to ask
struck for that.
forgiveness than permission, you know?
I mean, that's what all the top streamers do on Twitch, so I think I just react to
I think
stuff,
you'll
so it
be
should be
okay,
good.
yeah.
So I'll probably react to these as they come out, and watch them. I was actually curious if I, like, maybe knew anyone in this, thing they're doing, but if the people in it are the people in the image, I don't think I recognize any of them.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely curious to check it out, give it a watch. It did kind of make me think about all of the other Pokemon documentary stuff we've seen them filming over the last couple seasons that has not come out yet. Like, I've done some interviews with them before. I think my pre-COVID stuff that I was working on Pokemon with is just never coming out at this point. So, because they like interviewed me a couple times for something, but I don't think that's ever going to be a thing anymore. So, I'm not sure, but yeah, definitely curious to see this and then check it out for sure.
Yeah, looking forward to checking it out. Like we said, it comes out today, the day that this episode
Yeah.
is airing. So, yeah, maybe we'll talk about it next week. All 3 episodes will have been out next week, so we can give kind of our reactions to it and really like this is just good to see, right? The fact that the Pokemon company is investing resources into getting people interested in playing the Pokemon TCG, and that's what
Yeah.
this ultimately does, right? This is going to be a more mainline thing, like people who are not in, this is not something that is for the people in the competitive Pokemon TCG community, right? This is something just for Pokemon fans to check out and enjoy. And maybe this will accomplish the goal of, getting more people involved in the TCG community, right?
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny if you scroll down to the comments on the Poke Beach thing. The first comment is, "This is nice. I love when Pokemon uh represents the TCG as more than just collecting." And the second comment is like, it is fascinating that the Pokemon TCG is probably the only tabletop game out there that needs to actively encourage their players to play with the items they're
It's so
buying."
true. So
um,
true.
so that's kind of funny. But yeah, I guess I feel like it doesn't need to be encouraged. The game's been exploding the last couple
You didn't want to
seasons,
read
right?
the
Those couple
third
years. So
comment?
I didn't actually read it. What was the third one? I hope we
It
get a
says, I
murder.
hope we get a murder scene. What? Someone
um,
check on Beware the Terrible on Poke Beach, man.
yeah, but I'm cool to see what it's like and what it is. I'm just definitely interested. Like I said, I'm probably just watching it on the stream
Mhm.
uh throughout the
It's
week
another
as they
thing,
release.
another bit of TCG content you can do that
Yeah.
does not involve you playing TCG Live. So I'm sure you'll be
Yes.
happy to take advantage of
Super
that.
excited. As long as I possibly can. I'm kind of like I'm probably gonna watch the Japan Championships on stream. We'll watch these on stream. Just got to keep milking it for as long as I possibly can until I actually have to load up live and actually start playing games of Paldea Evolved because there's nothing else to really do or talk about. And I do want to play with the Paldea Evolved cards. I just don't want to play on live. And I've been seeing so many posts on Twitter. And it doesn't seem like it's like every single game people are running into bugs, but it does seem like maybe one of every 5 games or something like that, which is like that sounds like a miserable experience. So not loving the idea of playing games on live, but I do like the idea of playing with a Paldea Evolved, so I'm kind of conflicted here.
Well, before we get into Guess That Flavor Text, we do got to give a huge thanks to the sponsor of our podcast, Dragon Shield. So, huge thanks as always to Dragon Shield for being a sponsor of the Uncommon Energy podcast. Dragon Shield makes some of the best card gaming and tabletop gaming products, accessories on the market, including sleeves, binders, deck boxes, and so much more. Azul, what did you rock this weekend as far as sleeves go?
I rocked 2 different pairs. I got the blood reds. Again, I've been rocking those a lot recently, and
I
then
like them.
went to the greens, just green.
Just green,
I
matte
think it's
green.
just yeah, I think it's just yeah, the matte greens. And then, like I said, the basic colors feel really good, and the greens felt really, really good. So I don't know. I feel like the ones that are literally just like the basic base color ones, blood red, a little bit too. It's like a little bit fancier. But yeah, the base color ones just feel really, really good. So I'm
Yeah,
definitely gonna be
they
trying to go to more of those, using more of those in the future. I feel like.
Yeah, they sent me um a coupon code to go onto the website to buy some sleeves, and I literally just bought a case of matte blacks. Like that's been my go-to forever. It's literally the
Yeah.
most plain sleeve you can get, just matte black, but they're some of the best. They're my go-tos. I've used the matte blacks for years before we were even sponsored by Dragon Shield. So Happy to get a fresh case of those in. That's what my cube is sleeved in as well. So I'll have some boxes of that to replace some sleeves on the cube if necessary. So yeah, happy to get some more of those in.
So big shout out to Dragon Shield as always. Go check them out. dragonshield.com/webshop/EU or US, depending on where you're located. And as always, they're available everywhere. Local game stores, big box retailers, you name it, they are there. And with that, we will be jumping into Guess That Flavor Text. Chip, it is my week to pick a flavor text for you. The way this works for anyone who's new here is one of us will pick a card and read the flavor text on that card. And then it'll be up to the other host to try and guess which Pokemon that flavor text belongs to. And then there are 3 lifelines you can use if you want. If you guess it without using a lifeline, you get 4 points. And then for each lifeline you lose a point. What set the card is from, what stage the card is, and then read an attack name on the card. Chip, are you ready? I picked a pretty hard one this week. I'm
A
interested
hard
to
one.
see.
Oh, Azul's
Yeah.
getting competitive. He's trying to
This
get
might
back
be
in it.
the hardest flavor text we have ever had. Are you ready?
All right, I guess.
They strengthen their lower bodies by running into one another. They are very kind and won't start fights.
Strengthen their lower bodies by running into one another. Very kind and won't start fights. Well, I mean, my first instinct is a fighting type Pokemon, even though it doesn't start fights. It's strengthening its body, it's training, it's trying to get stronger, which is on brand for a fighting type Pokemon, right? So that would be kind of my first thought. And I mean, I remember like in the Pokemon cartoon and then like in the video games, Machoke being a Pokemon that is always working or working out. But that doesn't strengthens its lower body. So like that makes me also think that it's a Pokemon that has like a prominent lower body as well. Like that's like a bigger part of the Pokemon is its lower body, like Metacham or something like that. This definitely does not sound like a Metacham flavor text though. I'm gonna use some lifelines here. Let's
Medicham
start
does have some
with
legs.
huh?
Medicham does have some quads for sure.
Yes, Metacham has some legs. Let's go with what set the card is from.
It is from Breakthrough.
Breakthrough. Okay. So I don't think there's a Machoke line. There is not a Metacham in Breakthrough. I opened up a ton. Like Breakthrough was like when I first was playing the Pokemon TCG, so I was buying a ton of packs. So I opened up a lot of the Breakthrough set. So I feel like I know a lot of the Pokemon in it. I'm gonna go with read an attack name. Let me do that first.
Tackle.
Bro, come on. What's wrong with you? Tackle? Really? That's all you're gonna give me? Well, that definitely sounds like just like some basic Pokemon attack. So I don't even want to use the stage the card is. I mean, it could be an evolution Pokemon, I guess. Strengthens its lower body. So what are some of the good cards in Breakthrough? There's like the Gallade. Zolwark was really good from Breakthrough. Breakthrough was a super, super good set. There's that Empoleon that's in Breakthrough that was pretty decent at one point. It actually wasn't even that good, but I'm kind of trying to stall here a little bit. I think I can like picture the fighting Pokemon from the set, and there's like a Pancham in the set, I'm pretty sure. Would you give me a Pancham when I just gave you a Pancham?
That could be the move. Back to back pans.
It was a few weeks ago though.
Almost back to back pans.
Yeah, I think I do need to make a guess here. I mean, there also could be Chespin. There is a Chespin in Breakthrough, and I gave you that a few weeks ago.
True.
Running into each other. Yeah, I really don't know. I don't love this guess, but I think I'm going to just go. I don't think that what stage the card is going to help me. I'm pretty sure it's a basic. So I'll just go with Pancham.
It is not Pancham.
Wait. I don't get it. Is it Doduo?
No.
Okay.
The last lifeline was it is a stage 1
Ah.
Pokemon. And on top of that,
Is it
l-
Pangoro?
no, it belongs to the most hated, least relevant starter evolution line ever. It evolves
Quilladin?
from, yeah.
Oh my gosh. I was almost
this
on it with the chess pin.
this
Dang.
artwork looks like a mascot. It looks like there's a human in a mascot costume.
Yeah.
A super irrelevant Pokemon that no one would think of, and the flavor text has like nothing to do with anything besides being some type of fighting
I
Pokemon.
literally
I
said chesspin too because
I
I
know.
knew.
But how do you ever get to Quilladin from Chespin?
I mean, if I asked what stage it was, I
Age?
might have. I mean, I would have gone with either
That'd have been
Pangoro or
crazy.
Quilladin. Yeah.
It's just such a weird flavor text. They strengthen their lower bodies by running
This
into
thing
one
barely
another.
has a lower body.
I know. Well, that's why they gotta strengthen him, bro. Mostly upper body, definitely skipping leg day. Quilladin is.
He kind of looks like
So
you, Azul.
no, I don't think so.
He's got
Uh,
the smile, the blank stare.
all
Hey,
right, and
hey,
with
let us
that,
know down below if you see the resemblance. Azul, Quilladin.
Dual
I think
Quilladin.
it's
What's the
there. I
other
think
one?
it's there. The Simisear.
Simisear.
Bro, the Simisear is you. I don't care what anyone says. That is Azul GG right there.
It does kind of look like Quilladin. You're right.
Oh.
um, but let's move on to our last topic for uh the podcast before we get to the bonus episode, of course, and that is talking about Pokemon finally making a statement after their statement talking about making statements.
That's right. Yeah. So a few months ago, after the situation with Makani in Charlotte at the Charlotte Regional Championships, Pokemon did put a statement out over on their Twitter saying that they were going to um what was I going to say? I want to just read the one spot. Oh, we're investigating the most effective ways to keep the community informed about significant changes and incidents concerning play Pokemon activities. Because
That's
previous to
like,
this, they didn't tell us anything, right? It was
yeah,
just kind of like they swept it under the rug. The community got to talk about it. They would maybe do their own internal investigations, but we would never hear anything about it. We wouldn't know any of those things were even necessarily happening or not happening. But for those who remember, there was a pretty big incident in Hartford after Rowan Stabenow won the tournament. A video surfaced online of his friends shaving a hate symbol into the side of his head. We talked about it on the podcast when it happened. But now Pokemon's come out and actually made a statement around the situation. Now it is pretty vague. So if you didn't know what this statement was
yeah.
about, you would have no idea what they're talking about. But I'll just read the statement real quick, Azul, and then we can go through our thoughts on the situation and on the fact that Pokemon even said something. So first off, the post comes from TPCI underscore some ducks administrator. We are aware of a player accused of egregious behavior that falls well outside of the expectations for the play Pokemon community. Our investigation into this incident has resulted in the following conclusions. One, the player in question did not take an active role in what led to the accusation. Two, other persons, both from the player community and the peer group of the accused player, were determined to be responsible for the content that led to the accusation. And three, other persons from within the player community published the content and presented it publicly in a way intended to inflict damage upon the accused party. Currently, our findings do not support taking any disciplinary action against the accused player. Should more information come to light, we reserve the right to update our decision accordingly. Following an additional investigation, those who created the content and used against the accused player may face long term disciplinary consequences from the play program. Pokemon believes in creating a safe and inviting space for all our players. We take these matters seriously and we encourage all players to continue reporting any issues or incidents to us directly at support.pokemon.com. We want to reiterate that this behavior and symbols of hate do not align with our core values or the Play Pokemon standards of conduct. We are committed to fostering an environment that is inclusive to all participants, regardless of factors, including but not limited to age, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, and or disability. Thank you to our community for for being invested in keeping the Play Pokemon program safe and inclusive for all fans.
Yeah, so I think it's really good that they actually I didn't really read through everything that thoroughly the last time I read through it all, but it sounds like number two, other persons both from the player community and the peer group of the accused were determined to be responsible for the conduct that led to the accusation. So it sounds like the people stepped forward and said like it wasn't Rowan's fault outside of Rowan's like post that they made on Twitter, right? Am I
Yeah.
reading that correctly?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you. I mean, based on Pokemon's investigation, what they were able to find and what their ultimate conclusion was is that Rowan was not at fault in this
Yeah.
situation. And it also, I mean, very clearly does say, um, currently our findings do not support taking any disciplinary action against the accused player. So to me, I mean, this statement says in the minds of Pokemon, Rowan's all clear, all good to go.
Yeah. I mean, I think definitely if something like came up similar again, they'd probably be like, all
Yeah.
right, like,
Yeah,
yeah, like there's a pattern here, right? But
of course.
I don't think that's probably gonna happen. And yeah, it sounds like Rowan's in the clear for now. And there might be some disciplinary action towards the other parties involved. But it's really good that they made a statement like this, right? I think everyone is like super happy to see Pokemon doing this. I think there's still some other steps they could take further. I don't know about not naming anyone. I think that's probably fine. If you well,
Yeah.
Z, like we're in the know, so we know everyone they're referencing by not naming anyone. So I don't know how I feel about that. Like, should they name people? Should they not? I actually don't know how I feel about that, to be honest. I would like to like I'd definitely be interested in some takes on that in the comment
Yeah.
section.
I
If anyone
wonder
has
if
any opinions,
I wonder
leave it in
if
the
part
YouTube
of it is
comments.
that they don't wanna bring any more attention to
Yeah, or like a witch
Rowan.
hunt.
You know, like,
Yeah.
I mean, they are saying here that they do not believe Rowan did any wrong, and so maybe there's a concern that if they name him specifically,
You wanna
you
go
know, our
seek them
regional
out.
champion, Rowan Stavenau, this came out about him. Um, Maybe they're worried that more hate or more attention would be driven to him unnecessarily. But if you look at so they tweeted this and it's a link to the blog post on or I guess a forum post, I should say, on the Pokemon website. If you look in the replies, like everyone is like, "What is happening? This has to be the most vague statement ever. Anyone have any background on what this is all about?" Um, but yeah, I mean, I think overall this is a very positive thing to see that they're coming out and saying what their findings were. I mean, it's been a few weeks since Hartford happened, but I think it makes sense that it would take a few weeks for them to post something about it. It sounds
Yeah.
like they did a proper investigation, right? And they probably wanted to formulate a statement that was accurate to what their true intentions were moving forward as well.
Yeah, definitely. So it's kind of definitely cool to see him make the statement. Yeah, I don't know. I guess the thing, like tons of people, right? Like a ton of people follow the Play Pokemon account, and me and you are very invested in the community and very in tune with a lot of the goings on and the dramas and all that, right? So we know exactly what they're talking about. A lot of people
So many of
around
these
us,
questions, though, on
yeah.
the post.
So I don't know. Should they call out the 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 people, the players by name? I don't know. That's like something I'm not too sure about. You definitely don't want to incite more drama and witch hunting to happen through naming them, but also, it leaves so much up to the unknown for a lot of people by not putting names out there or maybe being a little bit more clear. Something like this, I think, is definitely a step in the right direction. But I think we're still definitely waiting on. They still have a post to make. Hopefully, we get a post about Eder sometime soon. I'm waiting for that one. So they're not done yet making
I
statements.
would
Hopefully,
I would love to be proven wrong about Eder. I've said since the beginning that I don't think he's going to be banned. I would love so much for them to prove me wrong and for them to come out and give us a statement saying that this player's been disqualified or not disqualified, but has received a ban or they've decided to take action against this player. Even if they don't say specifically like this they don't name the player and they don't say how long they're banned for, right? we're
Yeah.
in the know, right? We're gonna know, like, if they make another vague post like this, a
Yeah.
player at a recent tournament was accused
Well,
of
they would probably
doing
say
this on
Bogota,
stream, like, we'll
SB.
know what they're talking
Yeah.
about, right?
Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see if that happens. I think one of the reasons maybe that one is taking well, this one Hartford was before Bogota, right? So
Right,
like
right.
already wait, was it though?
Yes.
You sure?
You're making me question myself. You're gaslighting me.
I actually just don't know. So that's why I'm questioning it. Let's just say it was though. I know you're looking it up right now. So Harvard was before Bogota, and we just got the
It
Hartford statement.
was not. Bogota was
Ah,
a week before Hartford.
okay. So maybe we are a little bit late on this Bogota. The only thing about the Bogota thing, though, and this is something that kind of came to my mind, like as I was talking about it with someone at the tournament this weekend, is like if they because it's Bogota's points got uploaded super late, right? So that
They,
means like
like,
the
just got
TO,
uploaded this
yeah,
past week, I
yeah.
think.
So like the tournament wasn't reported by the TO until like literally this past week, and maybe with that, I'm sure they probably are waiting on a report from the TO to potentially make any decision around the Eder situation, right? They're probably waiting for them to like submit an official report alongside probably submitting the tournament. So that might be the delay in that is the only thing I can kind of think of. I'm just like, I would be so shocked if Eder does not receive a ban that I'm just like being like, okay, just give him a little bit more time, and hopefully that's all it is. But I don't know. At this point, I'm not too sure to be honest. Especially now with the confirmation that Bogota was in fact before Hartford Regionals.
But yes, overall, this is a very positive thing. It maybe this feels like more than baby steps as well, though. This feels like a good
No, no,
solid.
no,
You
no.
think it's
Don't
still
give him
baby
too much credit. It's
steps?
still baby
Okay,
steps.
okay, okay.
This is definitely the ban list isn't public, like anything like that. Like Magic's been
But I
posting
don't know
about
that
who gets
that's
banned when
ever
they get
going
banned
to
forever.
change, you know?
Yeah, that doesn't matter though. Like there's still not you can't give them too much credit. This is just like finally they're doing something that's correct. That's I think we should give them that. That's about it. Can't give them too much. Might run away with it. They still PTTG Live is a mess. They had to
That's totally
discontinue.
separate departments, dude.
They had to can their tournament software like no, we're not letting him cook. Not letting him cook.
They have been cooked.
This is one of the like the this is like one of those things that they should have just been doing from the start or for a while. Maybe not from the start, but
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess just the big question with this is like, should it be more direct? And I'd be kind of curious to know in other games. I think you asked a friend right before we started recording. I'd be curious to know in like Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh, if like when
yeah.
stuff happens, if they make announcements that clearly outline this person did this or we believe this person did this.
Yeah, I don't know. I think in Magic they definitely do that. But the person I asked, they're like a Yu-Gi-Oh player. They told me that the Yu-Gi-Oh ban list just gets like updated like 4 times a year, and then that's when you just know for sure that people are banned. But there's no like posts about the situation, so there's not quite as much transparency as Pokemon with this. That's funny though, Chip, that you like. Should we give Pokemon some credit for doing this? But like in basically in 2 sentences, 20 seconds apart, you're like, dude, they're never banning Eder, and you're like, let's give Pokemon credit. They're doing a good job here. Like,
Listen,
no,
man.
not don't want to give them too much credit. It's cool to see them doing this, and hopefully they continue to make more statements about situations that happen in the Pokemon TCG. I feel like they will. I feel like they can't really go back on this now, and that we'll see them with the future, situations that come up. We'll probably see more and more of these statements coming out. Finally, a statement. The statement about statements did actually lead to a statement eventually, and hopefully, at least many more statements for similar situations that come up in the future.
Yeah, yeah. So baby step in the right direction. How we can
Mm,
we're not even giving him a baby step, Azul. Come on, dude.
I-
Listen,
um,
if no credit's given whenever good things happen, then like what's the point, you know?
But they know. It's not like where it's like a child and is like we're having to like reward them to,
Oh
eh,
yeah, yeah.
to
Okay, it's fine. We don't
to
have
foster good
to
behaviors and stuff like that. They know they're adults over there. They can
we
handle
don't
it.
have to harp on it. It's totally fine. Totally
All right.
fine.
And I think with that said, Chip, I think that's it for the episode for this week. Unless you had something else you want to make a comment on.
No, I think that's it. That covers everything we wanted to talk about. I think we're both excited to kind of sink our teeth into Paldea Evolved a little bit more so we know.
Mm,
No?
well, I mean, it's on PDCG Live, so I don't know. I'm
There's
not
other
too
ways
sure.
to play, man. There's other ways to play. I know you
Maybe I have
probably won't play that way,
PTCGO.
but
Yeah, I don't think I will.
But yeah, thanks so much to everyone as always for listening. This is going to be the end of our main episode, but never fear, we have a bonus Patreon episode that we're going to record immediately as soon as this one ends. Thanks as always to those who have chosen to support us over on Patreon. And if you want to get some more content from us every single week, the place to do it is over at the Patreon linked in the description. But if you are just listening to the free episode here on YouTube or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to it, if you want to show your support non-monetarily, the best way to do that is by leaving a review, a rating, a like, a comment. Any of those things really do go a super long way. They help more people discover the podcast. So we really would appreciate it. You can follow us on our socials as well to stay in the loop of what we have going on. Myself at Chip Ritchie, Azul at Azul_GG, and then the podcast at Uncommon_Energy.
Yep, appreciate the support as always. I don't think there's any tournaments coming up this weekend. If you had any cups or challenges, good luck in
Puerto
those.
Rico
Especially those
special
people.
event. Is that this weekend or next weekend?
It might be this weekend actually. No, it's the weekend after because Paldea Evolved's legal.
Oh,
So it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
this weekend, yeah. But yeah, good luck to anyone wrapping up those invites. Quite a few people got their invites at Fresno.
Love to see it.
And I'm sure quite a few more will be getting theirs this weekend, cups and challenges and so on and so forth. And we'll catch y'all next week, Tuesday, 7 a.m. Eastern. Peace.